Can you hear me? I can't hear you for some reason.
Is that better?
There you go. Now I hear you.
Okay, cool. I am using the office front desk computer, and I'm not used to using this for teaching, so I apologize. I hope you guys can hear me okay. We will dive right in. This class this morning is going to be on opportunities, and so we will dive right into that. Let me just share my screen, and here we are. Awesome. And oh, it's not liking that. So give me 1 second. All right. Oh, weird. I must have an old version of Zoom here. So dive in. So before we get started, if you do have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box and we will get to them. If you want, you can raise your hand and I will call on you. That's your digital hand, which should be under the chat, or actually under the like where the emoji thing is. So just be aware of that. I'm going to mute everybody by default. And if you need to unmute, you can hit the space bar or unmute yourself. All right, so let's dive in. Opportunities is the handshake icon on the far left of command. So when you click on that handshake icon, the first thing you are going to see, do you guys still see my screen? No, hold on, give me 1 second, let me fix this. I just moved it to the other screen. Here we go. You guys see that okay? Excellent. So you're going to see a pipeline that looks like this. Now, there are a couple of different layers to the pipeline that we're going to talk about, but ultimately, the pipeline has 3 different pipelines. One for the listing, one for the buyers, and then one for rental transactions. The rental transaction is both for tenants and landlords, right? So the rental transaction is actually further down on the screen. It's under leases, and your landlords will live in there as well. Now you might think, oh, a landlord is a listing. It's, you know, why isn't it under listings? And it has to do with how the commission is calculated, right? So we calculate the commission on rentals differently, and so they live in the leases pipeline. All right. So next, the next piece to this is there are these 5 phases in every transaction. The first phase is cultivate, and what cultivate ultimate, sorry, let me take a step back. What the 5 phases ultimately are what Keller Williams has defined as the parts of the transaction that everybody will go through, right? Now, some of you might not start it at as early as cultivate. You might have other processes for getting them there. However, these are the 5 that, regardless of if you use the system, Keller Williams has defined every agent utilizes. So cultivate is when they raise their hand and they say they're going to do business. Whether or not they do business with you is up to you to convert them, but they do raise their hand and say they're going to do business. Now, you could take them for cultivate. I know people do it within a year. I know people do it within 2 years. I know people do it within 6 months. That's up to you, but you do create opportunities in the cultivate. Appointment is when you book appointments or go on appointments that then don't turn into transactions. Although some of the appointments that you go on that don't turn into transactions, you'll dump those people back into cultivate because maybe they're just not ready yet. Active is when you signy, right? It's when they sign on the dotted line and you either get the buyer agency agreement or the listing agreement. Now, you could argue, well, I don't get my buyer's agency agreement signed. And well, I would say you need to evaluate your business if you're not doing that. And yet, do people do it? Absolutely. That being said, if they are actively looking, if you're actively working with them, that is ultimately the point. You have them in the active section. Under contract, right, is when they come to terms, they meet buyers and sellers. Buyers and sellers, come to terms on a contract, and now you're moving it into escrow, and then obviously closed is closed. Now, I'm going to jump over to my pipeline. I actually have a team pipeline here for some training things, but there are a couple other things involved in this. The numbers underneath, which is when things exist within each of those sections, what the volume attributed to that is, and what the average number of days that things exist in each of those sections, right? That's more for conversion later on for your purposes. So just be aware of that. Now, over on the far right, you have potential income and probable income. Now, potential income is the commission calculation of every single thing in your pipeline. So if you have 100 cultivates and 10 appointments and 3 actives and 1 under contract, it shows you all of that potential income. So if it was 50 million, it would show it as 50. Now, if, for example, you have more in cultivate than under contract, that's where probable income comes into play. So if I define that a cultivate, for example, that is 6 months out from making decision has a 5% chance of closing, and an under contract that is clear to close has a 99% chance of closing, each of those are going to take their respective probability of closing and recalculate your probable income. So it's a way of taking all the potential income in your pipeline and actually converting it to what we call a more realistic number, so that you can basically say, all right, I need to put more people in cultivate, or I need to move more people from cultivate to active to get my probable income to increase. Now, it's up to you to set those probability numbers. We'll show you where to do it, but it's a tool for you to be able to focus your business and understand what the value of your current sales pipeline is. Now, within these, we'll go in a second to create opportunity, but before we go there, I'm going to show you one of these sections. So, for example, the active section. Now, your active section may look different than my active section, and that's because within this, these stages you can edit and change to be whatever you want. So, I believe the originals were staging, showing, multiple offers, negotiations, something like that. I changed it to be delayed listing, pre-listing, active on MLS. And if you see, there's actually more here. Then I have multiple offers. And ignore legacy, that has to do with dot loop. Don't worry about that. Now, for me and how I run my business, delayed listing means let's say, for example, I take a listing in November, but they're not going to go on the market till the beginning of the year. Maybe I still want to sign them that early because I want to have them under contract, but I'm not going to put it on for that. Again, mentally, that's something I do in my business. You might not. Pre-listing, well, I think it takes about a week to 2 weeks from when you sign the contract to when you should put it on the MLS. That's my pre-listing period. Active on MLS then is when it's actively being marketed. And then I actually don't move it to a negotiation sections, but if there's multiple offers, I will move it to a multiple offer because then I can better keep track of it. Why is this important? Well, let's say if you work let's say you work 1 transaction a month, you might be like, this is a lot of work for 1 transaction a month. But if you're working 10 transactions a month or 15 transactions a month, the ability to quickly look and see where every transaction is super important. Now, another thing to note is when you edit these stages, you can edit 2 things. You can edit the name of the stages and the order, right? That's important. You can change the probability that it actually closes. Remember, we talked about that probable income. Then you can also add checklist items. So whenever I drag an opportunity card in there, I get a checklist of these things that I know I have to do. And so I actually did a great, and I'm going to blast this out. If you guys want it, put your email in the chat. I did a interview with an agent out of Wisconsin who does like 217 transactions a year and uses these checklists to create really great client experiences. And about 70% of his business comes from referral. And he attributes that to these really great experiences. Now, there are 2 ways to do this. One is just having a checklist like this so that you always make sure that you handle every single transaction the exact same, right? And so that you can actually, you don't have to think about it. Now, I personally think you should overdo these checklists, because if there's something you don't do for a specific transaction, you could always just remove the item from the checklist later on for a one-off. But when you load it, you want to load everything. So again, this is everything I do in the active prep section. Now, what are these client updates? Now, client updates actually allow the system to automatically send a list of those items that have to be done, again, that I am going to do for my client, but it shows my client 2 things. It says, hey, Joe has to do these things, and these are the ones Joe has completed, and these are the ones Joe hasn't completed, right? Now, this, again, does 2 things. One, it lets your clients know you're working for them. And 2, it actually shows them when you've completed things, so you never get that, oh, hey, what did you do for me this week, right? So you can do that. Now, I'm going to jump out of here real quick. You can edit these and delete these. You change the name, the probability, all from here. Now, I have an under contract one here, my demo listing. As you can see, I have the client update turned off, so they're not going to get the client updates. I'll show you how to turn that on in just a second. But if I go and click on this checklist now, I'm under the inspection period, so I can confirm inspection dates, review inspection results. Maybe there's a one-off item where it says, now I say inspection will be held on 7/17. And I set that as a client update, and I set due date to 7/17. And I say review, and I click save. Now, this is going to do a couple of things. One, it's now going to send them a client update, which informs them when the inspections will be. So again, it's just for them to review. I'm still going to call them, but just so they have it somewhere. And then it's also going to put a reminder in my task list, and it's going to allow me to do that. So then when inspections are held, I can click check off, and I can also go in here and do a one-off, and I say, review inspection reports with clients. And now I can also set a due date. So again, these are one-off things that I will do as the transaction goes on. So now this isn't, I could make it a client update, where now it's going to update them and I hit close. Now I still have client updates off, so I got to show you where you turn those on. But that is something that you can do with those checklists for managing these transactions. Now, if I'm in this checklist and maybe I need to go back and do some items from a previous checklist, or I want to start the next checklist, I can always click the back button to see, okay, I didn't submit the documents to the MC, so I still have to do that. And I still have to create a contract information form, so I can do that. And maybe I'm on this and I want to go here. Well, I'm at the contract signature stage, but as you can see, I didn't move it to that section yet. So the checklist isn't here, right? When I drag it, And let me show you, when I drag it from here to here, it will add that checklist. But if I haven't done that yet and we're still in inspections, I could always just click next and then load the template in here so that I have this information that I can do and start this checklist. So will the attorney be writing their own contract, verified contracts, right? So again, depending on the transaction. Now, this checklist might not make sense to you because this is what I do in my business. But again, you build your checklist to match your business and how you are working. All right. So now let's go back real quick. Before we get into creating an opportunity, I just want to show you real quick on all opportunities. I think of this section as your digital whiteboard. So for example, you know how we have those whiteboards in our offices sometimes, or maybe you don't, but you see agents who do. Well, you can actually go and build a digital whiteboard with these items. And so all I'm really going to do is I'm going to go here and put a filter. And I could say, oh, well, in this case, I had under contract, pending, and active. So this is all my business. But maybe I actually want to see all my closings I had this year. So I could go in here and I can say, okay, I want to say anything that's closed. And I want the closing bit date to be this year. And I hit apply. And well, this isn't pulling anything up because I'm in the wrong thing. But then I can see, okay, these are all of my closings that happened this year, right? Or I can set another date range and maybe I can say, maybe I want to see everything that happened last year, right? Or the year before, custom. And then I can go in here and do that. So again, I have the opportunity to build this digital whiteboard, and then I can actually go and save this as a smart view so that I can quickly pull it up. So I want to pull up all my under contract listings. I want to pull up whatever, and now I can quickly view that digital whiteboard. Awesome. So now I'm going to go back to my main opportunity pipeline, and I'm going to click the create opportunity. Before we do that, one thing to note is if you are on a contacts card, you can go and create an opportunity from there. The only difference is when you do it from there versus here, it won't show a client automatically here. It will if you start from their contact card. Now, you always need to create the contact first before you create the contact opportunity because we have clients before we have opportunities on those clients. So now a couple things, if you're on a team, you're going to want to pick your team name. You want to pick the opportunity type. You can't change this later. You can archive one you made by mistake, but you can't change it. So I'm going to say this is a listing opportunity, and I'm going to work with my good friend, Bob Barker. And now here's a cool thing is if I click a client and they have a related contact, I can pick them up right away. Now, if maybe Bob is not buying with his wife, but buying with a friend, so I'll pick my brother, I can search all contacts and then he shows up in this list here. So I do have the ability to not only pick related contacts, but search for other contacts. The opportunity name is automatically going to name it by their name and what type it is. And you can put tags. Now, if you tags are up to you how you want to do it. I use a tag, for example, if I owe a referral on it, then I know that I'm going to have to pay a referral commission time, short sales or investors, because those are things that I like to look at all at once. Again, these are just things to quickly identify what type of opportunity is and if I owe anybody any commission on it. Maybe I'm partnering with an agent, so I owe an inside referral. So I owe whatever it is. I would always put a tag on it so I remember, and the tag would then show up on the commission itself. Estimated close date, up to you. Estimated listing price. I actually prefer to put what I think the closing price will be, because remember how we talked about that potential versus probable income? I like to get really real about what I think it's going to sell for so that I'm not kidding myself with that commission. So with a listing, I would put what I think it would sell for. With a buyer, I usually put an average of their range. But again, if you want to be more conservative, you could put the lower end of their range, right? And then you're being more conservative with your potential income. Commission rate, again, for a seller, I put what I do on the sell side. For a buyer, I usually put whatever is typical offered in the MLS, whatever MLS you're in. I know certain areas and certain price points, sometimes you'll see different commission rates. So again, for a buyer, I usually put, I try to be conservative, so I put whatever I typically see as far as that commission goes. And if it happens to be something else, well, then I just make more money. The opportunity phase, you have to pick initially either cultivate, appointment, or active, and then you can pick the section. So maybe this is a cultivate, and maybe they are 6 to 12 months out. And so I'm going to create this cultivate. They're a short sale, and actually a short sale is probably be 0 to 6 months, and I'll hit create. Another use of tags for cultivate might be to put the month you think they're going to list the property. So if you think they're going to list in January, creating a tag for January, that way you can look at all of those all at once and follow up with them all at once. Now, the very first page it's going to bring me on here is the opportunity details page. If it's a listing, you can select from the KWLS, but if it's not yet on the KWLS, you can go and edit the property information here. So if it's 123 Main Street, again, I can do this, and now there's a property link to it. In order to be able to submit it as a commission, which we will talk about at 2 o'clock, you do need to attach a property to the opportunity. Otherwise, it's going to give you an error, right? That is required. The other thing you can do is you can put a seller worksheet, which you can use for the offers. So if you wanted to do a net sheet for them later on, it does allow you to show their nets. And then I'm going to click on the edit here just to show you the additional things we can put in the details. Now, again, remember I put the Bob Barker. I can change the opportunity. And if you remember here, initially I was only able to put it up to active, but from here I can change it to under contract or closed. Now, what these dates are important for is for reports. So if you have dates in here, your report section is going to update. So I'll just run through the dates really quickly. Appointments scheduled. Well, if I'm calling expireds and I call expireds today, and today is the 13th, well, I set the appointment on the 13th. So that's when I'm going to put here is appointment scheduled is the 13th. Now, if I don't go on the appointment till the 16th, because that's when I scheduled it for, well, when I go on the appointment on the 16th, I'm going to put it, right? That's what appointment date is. Now, maybe I didn't sign the agreement on the 16th and they said, oh, we want to take the weekend to think about it. And I signed it on the 19th. Well, that's agreement 1. Then I had it on the market for 30 days. It went under agreement on the 19th of August. And then my closing date, whatever that's going to be. Now, estimated close date and actual close date are different. This will be required to have something in here in order to submit it to the market center as a final closing. Again, estimated list price, I try to be conservative. I'm going to click save, and now this is going to show up in here. Any questions on that so far? Okay, so seller profile, this is going to be if they've downloaded your consumer app. It will allow you to move them through the buyer and the seller guides, which we talk about on the day we do consumer. But they will need to register with the same email address you have on file. So if they don't, there's a way to fix that. We're not going to get into that today, but as long as they register with the same email you have on file, you can assign them the guide. The documents section is where you'll handle your documents that you are going to submit to the market center. Offers and commissions, which we're going to be doing this afternoon, is when you go through and actually submit your commission to the market center. And then notes is if you want to make any notes on the transaction. Timeline, every time you do something to an opportunity, it records it and puts it on the timeline, and that's for compliance if anything ever happens and we need to review it. Documents, you're going to have to pick a checklist type. Now, yours may look different than mine because Stanford and Ridgefield do have different checklists set up, but you click on the checklist and then it pulls in all of the required documents that you need. There are 3 sections listed under contract and closed. and you would pull in those files. Now, when you click add a file, you can either upload it or get it from a custom folder, or if you've started a transaction either with DocuSign or .loop, you can pull in signed documents from there if you've worked on them there. Now, other things you can do, I can change the checklist over here. I can share documents here, exported. Maybe there's an item that I need to submit that's not on this list. So for example, maybe it's under contract and I want to upload the inspection report. So I can go and upload the inspection report and then call this other and then upload that, right? I don't just have to do what's on this list. This is my organizational place where I can organize and keep track of everything that is a part of the transaction. I can add a comment, which is for the MCA, and I can upload multiple files at once, which allows me to do, again, multiple files all at once. Now, if you see this, there's nothing here. If you see it as a link, that ends up being a blank version of the document. So if you're somebody who likes to download them and fill them out by hand, and it's there, you can grab it here. Otherwise, you need to go over to DocuSign, which again, we're not working on today, but you can go over to DocuSign. Now, if you really want to learn DocuSign, we are almost out of time. I just want to point this out. In the marketplace, and I'll click on this real quick, there's a great free class called, I believe it's called Command Your Transaction. Search for it. Command Your Transaction. It is no cost. And this class has two sections. The first is my first transaction in Command, which kind of does everything we're doing here, but in a little more detail, and they take a little more time going through it. The second one is DocuSign is in the details, and this is how they teach you how DocuSign and Command interact with each other, and they really go through an in-depth class on that. I recommend both these classes to take your ability to use Command and the documents to the next level. So again, go to the marketplace, which is this little thing up here, and search for Command Your Transaction, and it will bring you to that. Now, when you buy it, they'll send you an email. It says buy, but really it's free, it's zero cost. They send you an email, and then you have to sign up for a date. So just make certain that you look for the follow-up email before you do that. So that's basically it. We are out of time. We have about 3 minutes. So if there are any questions before we move on, I do want to pull up a video off that we grabbed on YouTube and share it in chat because I think it'll be really good for those checklists. Give me 1 minute to pull that up. This is, again, it's called Creating a Top-Notch Client Experience. I'm going to put this in chat for you. This is an agent, again, a mega agent that I know out of Wisconsin who uses those checklists to teach just about everything that a lot of what we talked about, but how he uses it to create really great client interaction opportunities. And again, he does about 217 transactions a year. He uses a combination of Command and other systems, but for this particular thing that he's doing, he uses Command exclusively. So definitely check that video out, as well as come back for our class at 2 o'clock if you do want to learn about commissions. And thanks for coming. We're all set today.
Thank you, Joe.
Jackie.
Hello.
I'm just finishing up my class and
Oh, sorry.